Chapter 2587. My wife, are you preparing to become Yu Siqing's direct disciple? Bewitching looked at Bailey Hongzhuang, who was sitting next to him, and slowly asked. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. Yu Siqing has always been a very careful person. If I don't become her direct disciple, I'm afraid that I won't even have the chance to come into contact with her normally. If I want to poison her, it won't be an easy task. When she found out that Yu Siqing had poisoned Mu Jin's, she had already made up her mind. She wanted to increase the intensity of the poison on Yu Siqing's body. Hence, she had added some ingredients to the original poison and was waiting to use it. She wanted Yu Siqing to have a taste of the pain of being poisoned by the poison. Only then would she not let down her grandmother's hard work. Even if you become her direct disciple, with her sinister and vicious personality, it won't be easy for you to accomplish this. Bewitching said in a low voice. This was what they had always found difficult. If it wasn't for this, it would be very easy to poison the Yu clan directly. However, only after dealing with Yu Siqing would Bailey Hongzhuang truly feel relieved. Yu Siqing was not only skilled in the art of medicine and poison, she was also very powerful. Hence, when they were dealing with Yu Siqing, they had to be extra careful. Bailey Hongzhuang's pitch-black eyes flashed with understanding. She said in a low voice, I've already expected this. However, I feel that as long as we get close to Yu Siqing, we'll have a chance sooner or later. She believed that no matter how cautious Yu Siqing was, there would be a time when she would relax. Given some time, she would definitely be able to find a chance to poison Yu Siqing. Furthermore, once she poisoned the Yu clan, Yu Siqing would definitely be in a terrible fix. In that kind of situation, it would be hard to avoid negligence and her chances of success would greatly increase. Bewitching quietly held Bailey Hongzhuang's hand tightly. I'm still here. Even if something really happened, he would not let anything happen to Bailey Hongzhuang. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang smiled, revealing her white and neat teeth. That smile went straight to the bottom of her heart. I know. She was no longer afraid of anything, and her heart was incomparably strong. At the end of the second round of the competition, the results of the first round of the written test were already out. The first round of the finals, first place, Xian Yi, 5 points. Following the announcement of Bailey Hongzhuang's results, there was another burst of exclamations. Bailey Hongzhuang's results in the preliminary round were already very amazing. Who would have thought that she would get full marks in the first round of the finals? It was really amazing. Similarly, Ji Lishue was in second place with 4 points. Because there was a mistake in one of the names of the herbs she had written down, 1 point was deducted. Seeing this, Ji Lishue could not help but frown. She did not think that she would lose to Bailey Hongzhuang in the first round of the finals. Compared to the other people's exclamations and envy, Bailey Hongzhuang's expression did not change much from the beginning to the end. However, one could vaguely see that there was some joy on her face. Of course, this trace of joy was purposely put on by Bailey Hongzhuang. If she really did not have any reaction at all, it would probably arouse suspicion. After knowing this result, no one doubted that Bailey Hongzhuang would definitely get first place in the recruitment competition. Chapter 2588. The third round of the finals was more normal. It was a consultation with a doctor. However, this illness was very special. If one's medical skills were not up to a certain standard, they would not be able to diagnose it. After the third round of the competition, the final result was out. Bailey Hongzhuang won the first place without a doubt, and this result was extremely shocking. This was because Bailey Hongzhuang was the only person in the history of the recruitment tournament to pass with full marks. Such a result caused a huge uproar in Yutian City. Even though some people had guessed before, they still found it hard to believe when it actually happened. After all, this result was too shocking. Bailey Hongzhuang passed with full marks. How amazing must her medical skills be to be able to obtain such a result? Ji Lishue was also stunned when she saw Bailey Hongzhuang's result. However, it was true that she couldn't compete with such results. She couldn't compete at all. The participants who passed the recruitment tournament can enter the Yu clan tomorrow morning and become a member of the Yu clan. Following the Yu clan great elder's words, all the doctors and poison masters who passed the recruitment tournament had smiles on their faces. This night, some people in Utian City were happy, while others were sad. Many of the failed doctors and poison masters chose to leave. If they continued to stay, it would only increase their sadness. When Ji Lishue returned to her residence and saw Di Tiansong, she found that Di Tiansong's skin had been scratched beyond recognition. Moreover, he was still scratching non-stop. Seeing Ji Lishue return, Di Tiansong could not help but move closer to Ji Lishue with a pleading look on his face. "Lishue, help me. If this continues, I'm really going to die." Di Tiansong felt that he was going crazy from the itchiness. Even if he died, he would not be in such pain. Ji Lishue looked at Di Tiansong in front of her. She did not know why, but Bailey Hongzhuang's words today were especially shocking to her. She felt that Bailey Hongzhuang was telling the truth. Since even an outsider could understand this, how could she continue to sink into oblivion? It was precisely because of this incident that she felt that Bailey Hongzhuang was not as annoying as before. On the contrary, these conflicts were originally caused by Di Tiansong. She just envied Bailey Hongzhuang. "From the day you gave up on me, we went our separate ways. You can solve your own problems. It has nothing to do with me." Ji Lishue made up her mind. In fact, she had done everything she could, but it was useless. Perhaps, this was God's way of helping her get over this matter. Hearing Ji Lishue's words, Di Tiansong was dumbfounded. He had never thought that Ji Lishue would treat him like this. "Lishue, what do you mean by this? You can't do this to me." Without waiting for Di Tiansong's reply, Ji Lishue closed the door and ignored him. The next morning, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other doctors and poison masters who had passed the recruitment ceremony had already arrived at the Yu clan's entrance. From today onwards, they were part of the Yu clan. Everyone's faces were brimming with excitement, and Bailey Hongzhuang was no exception. She was very excited. Her plan could finally be implemented. Chapter 2589. After all the doctors and poison masters had moved into the Yu residence, Bailey Hongzhuang and Ji Lishue were called to Yu Xiqing. Yu Xiqing had decided to accept the two of them as her personal disciples, but Bailey Hongzhuang would be the head of the personal disciples. This news made Ji Lishue extremely excited. She had never thought that Master Yu Xiqing would accept her as her personal disciple. This had always been her goal. Bailey Hongzhuang did not care about what Yu Xiqing was thinking. Perhaps others would think that becoming Yu Xiqing's personal disciple was a very glorious thing, but to Bailey Hongzhuang, this title was disgusting. After that, Bailey Hongzhuang and Ji Lishue were arranged to stay not far from Yu Xiqing's residence. They were not in the same place as the other doctors. Although they were staying in the Yu residence, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others could enter and leave freely. Everything was very convenient. After this interaction, Bailey Hongzhuang also found that Yu Xiqing was an extremely cautious person. Because of her unknown background, Yu Xiqing sometimes trusted Ji Lishue more. After all, Yu Xiqing understood Ji Lishue's situation very well. This was within Bailey Hongzhuang's expectations. Since Yu Xiqing was so vicious, she must have made a lot of enemies. If he wasn't careful, he might lose his life at any time. Otherwise, Yu Xiqing would not have stayed in the Yu residence for so many years and rarely left. "Master, Yu Xiqing is still so guarded against us. It will not be easy to poison her." Xiao Hei's face was full of helplessness. It did not think that this matter would be difficult, but after experiencing it personally, it could not help but feel that Yu Xiqing was really an old fox. It is indeed not easy to gain Yu Xiqing's trust. "My wife, don't be anxious." Di Beichen's bright eyes were filled with confidence and a deep luster. He placed one hand on Bailey Hongzhuang's shoulder, his voice filled with faint concern. A sinister and cunning person like Yu Xiqing was not easy to deal with. If he acted too hastily, it would be easier for him to give himself away. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded lightly, a smile appearing on her beautiful face. "I have already entered the Yu clan for half a month. Yu Xiqing has tried many ways to test me, but I have dealt with them all." I could feel that she had let her guard down a little recently. As long as she kept it up, it shouldn't be difficult. If a month isn't enough, then I'll have to start with Ji Lishue. Yu Xiqing didn't believe her, but she believed Ji Lishue. As long as she started with Ji Lishue, she might have a chance. This Yu Xiqing is really sinister. In this half a month, she didn't teach you anything at all. She completely treated you as handyman. That Ji Lishue is so happy even when she's doing odd jobs. I'm really impressed. White Lion shook its head. It really admired Ji Lishue's optimism. Hearing that, Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. Ji Lishue is really someone who is obsessed with medicine. Yu Siqing's medical skills are publicly recognized as the best, so Ji Lishue has always been proud to be Yu Siqing's disciple. After so many years of achieving her goal, she is naturally willing to do odd jobs. In this period of time, the gap between her and Ji Lishue had gradually disappeared. On the contrary, Bailey Hongzhuang also admired Ji Lishue's pure love for medicine. Chapter 2590. Yu Siqing seemed to be isolating Bailey Hongzhuang on purpose. Normally, she would contact other doctors and poison masters and leave them to Ji Lishue. Therefore, although Bailey Hongzhuang was the eldest direct disciple in name, in the eyes of the Yu clan's discerning people, Bailey Hongzhuang's position was actually not as high as Ji Lishue's. However, Bailey Hongzhuang did not show any dissatisfaction because of this. On the contrary, she silently completed the basic tasks that Yu Siqing had given her. During these days, Bailey Hongzhuang gradually understood the Yu clan's situation. The Yu clan's martial arts hall had suffered quite a bit of damage after being blown up by Bailey Hongzhuang. Fortunately, the most important things did not disappear. As a medical aristocratic family, the Yu clan's martial arts hall not only had martial arts and techniques, but also many rare medical books. Bailey Hongzhuang felt that this was a very good resource. Since she wanted to destroy the Yu clan, then she would also take these things with her. Perhaps it would be difficult for her to enter the various restrictions, but it would be easier to leave it to Xiao He, Xiao Bai and the primordial chaos ring. Lan Qingyan endured the torment of pain every day. Now she was only skin and bones. Later on, perhaps she had a mental breakdown. Sometimes she would cry out loud. Bailey Hongzhuang lived near Yu Siqing's residence, so she was very clear about this. Seeing Yu Manlin's tear-filled face every day, Bailey Hongzhuang only felt a sense of satisfaction. The evils that one brought upon themselves were the hardest to bear. If Yu Manlan and Lan Jingquang had not done such an unforgivable thing, Lan Qingyan would not have to endure such pain. Lan Jingquang stayed in the Yu clan for a period of time. After seeing that Lan Qingyan's condition did not improve, he could not stay any longer and chose to return to the Lan clan. From the expression on Lan Jingquang's face, Bailey Hongzhuang was sure that the Yu clan was also in turmoil. If not, Lan Jingquang would not be in such a hurry to return. This was a good sign. In the blink of an eye, a month had passed. The night was especially dark. The entire land was covered by a thick layer of darkness. Bewitching took advantage of the night to sneak into the Yu clan. This time, the infiltration was very successful. Bailey Hongzhuang had already understood the Yu clan's situation within this month. If there were no accidents, they would not be discovered. In this period of time, Bailey Hongzhuang had already placed poison in the Yu clan's important places. However, to make it happen, they still need to do it. Wifey, did you successfully put the goo in Yu Siqing? Bewitching lowered his voice and asked Bailey Hongzhuang. Yes. Succeeded. Use she's, she, s2 she, the ugg's g, s had. And instead, Hongyueyu. However, she did not expect Lan Qingyan to struggle like a madwoman today. Yu Siqing had been troubled by Lan Qingyan for almost 2 months. Facing Lan Qingyan and Yu Manlan every day, Yu Siqing could not help but feel annoyed. Taking advantage of this, Bailey Hongzhuang pretended to be concerned about Yu Siqing and handed her a cup of tea. Yu Siqing drank it just like that. Perhaps because Bailey Hongzhuang's performance was impeccable, Yu Siqing lowered her guard. Chapter 2591. After seeing Yu Siqing drink the tea with her own eyes, Bailey Hongzhuang asked Xiao Bai to inform Bewitching that they would start their operation tonight. During these days, Bewitching had always been prepared. As long as Bailey Hongzhuang completed the goo poison, their plan would be able to start. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's reply, Bewitching didn't ask further. What should we do next? Spread the poison powder one by one. We will move together. I have already checked every area, so we won't be discovered. Originally, when they entered the Yu clan as outsiders, the Yu clan members were a little wary of them. However, after a month of peace, their wariness had gradually dissipated. Moreover, she had the title of eldest direct disciple, so no one would suspect her. Bewitching nodded. Bailey Hongzhuang was also a meticulous person. Since she was so confident, there wouldn't be any other problems. Xiaohe, Xiaobai, follow the method I told you to sneak into the martial arts hall and put the things inside into the chaos ring. Master, don't worry. Leave it to us. Xiaohe and Xiaobai patted their chests, their faces filled with excitement. They had been waiting for this day for a long time. Every day, they hoped that they would be able to move earlier. Now, the opportunity had finally come. They would definitely complete their mission without any problems. Let's go. Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching turned into black shadows and disappeared from the Yu clan. It was now late at night, so everyone was already resting. The two of them turned into ghosts and quickly appeared in every corner of the Yu clan, displaying the effects of the poison powder. Bailey Hongzhuang chose to poison the water well. This was the best way to spread the poison. Previously, the Yu clan had used their medical skills to force their entire family into a corner. Now, she was using her medical skills to return everything to the Yu clan. The poison this time was definitely not as easy to detoxify as the previous one. Bailey Hongzhuang was sure that very soon, the enormous Yu clan would collapse and Yutian City's prosperity would no longer be the same as before. After Yu Siqing was poisoned by the goo poison, she probably didn't have the heart to detoxify the poison. Moreover, she had already been annoyed by Lan Qingyan for the past 2 months and her condition wasn't good. With all these reasons, Bailey Hongzhuang could almost predict what would happen next. This process was still filled with risks. Bailey Hongzhuang did not go to the residence of the Yu clan's top-notch experts to poison them. The other party's mental power was extremely sensitive, and as long as there was even the slightest movement, he would definitely notice. Even though Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching had a certain degree of confidence in their own movement skills, they were still unwilling to take the risk. Once they were discovered, they would be in danger. With the increase in the strength of Bailey Hongzhuang and Xiao Luo, the operation this time was undoubtedly much easier and faster than the last time. After everything was done, the two of them returned to the vicinity of Yu Siqing's residence. Inside the house, Lan Qingyan's moans were still coming out intermittently, but it was very annoying. Yu Siqing had already used her elemental energy to seal her ears when she slept, so she didn't want to pay attention to it. Therefore, there was even less risk here. Bailey Hongzhuang directly wrote 2 words on the wall of Yu Siqing's room: revenge. She was here for revenge. Chapter 2592. Perhaps, the Yu clan members tomorrow would not understand the true meaning of the word revenge, but after 2 days, the weight of this revenge would be known to them. Bewitching looked at Bailey Hongzhuang, who was beside him with a piercingly cold expression. He knew that everything that had happened today was of great significance to Bailey Hongzhuang. The source of all these grievances would be destroyed in the next few days. Xiaohe and Xiaobai were not slow either. After finishing their business, they immediately rushed back to gather. After the 2 little fellows shrunk, they were like pebbles, slowly moving into the martial arts hall. The guards of the martial arts hall only treated them as 2 little insects and did not take them seriously. After all, who would expect 2 little insects to cause any damage to the martial arts hall? It was a pity that Xiaohe and Xiaobai, these 2 abnormal demonic beasts that could change their sizes, were present. Master, let's go quickly. Xiaohe and Xiaobai quickly jumped onto Bailey Hongzhuang, their expressions revealing a hint of panic. At the same time, they returned the chaos ring to Bailey Hongzhuang. Seeing Xiaohe and Xiaobai's expressions, Bailey Hongzhuang and Xiaobai knew that the 2 little fellows had most likely encountered a problem during their mission. They immediately turned around and left without any hesitation. The longer they delayed, the more dangerous it would be. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching turned around and left, a figure with an ugly expression appeared at the place where they had been previously. There are indeed people's auras here. The elder who was guarding the martial arts hall had a solemn expression. he was originally cultivating when he suddenly heard a voice coming from the martial arts hall, breaking the original silence. After hearing this voice, he felt that something was wrong. Before he could even take a look, he sensed two auras escaping at high speed. As far as he was concerned, this was simply an impossible matter. This was because he hadn't sensed any auras approaching the martial arts hall. He quickly chased after the two auras that had escaped, only to discover that there were two more auras here. Turning his gaze, the elder suddenly saw the word revenge on the door of Yu Siqing's house. The premonition in his heart became even more uneasy. He immediately shouted. After calling out to Yu Siqing, he didn't stay any longer and hurriedly chased in the direction that the aura had left. At present, he still didn't know what had happened in the martial arts hall, but no matter what, he couldn't let them escape. "How were you discovered?" Bailey Hongzhuang asked Xiao He and Xiao Bai as she teleported away from Yutian City. She had already thoroughly investigated the Yu clan situation. Logically speaking, she shouldn't have been discovered. Xiao He and Xiao Bai looked at each other and could not help but feel a little guilty. When we were picking up the martial skill books, we accidentally dropped a martial skill book on the ground, and we were discovered. This was definitely something that they didn't expect. At that time, they just wanted to take everything away as quickly as possible. In the end, this happened because of a moment of carelessness. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang also understood. With your small arms, the speed at which you carry things is really slow. Although Xiao He and Xiao Bai could change their body shape, judging from their body proportions, their hands were definitely not considered long and slender. "It's all our fault for being careless." Xiao He's voice carried a hint of dejection. Originally, everything had been going smoothly, but they didn't expect to have to leave like this in the end. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled slightly. Her smile was filled with joy and happiness. Chapter 2593. This time, when Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching left Yutian City, they weren't as miserable as the first time. As their strength increased, their speed increased as well. Even if an elder was chasing after them, he wouldn't be able to catch up. Of course, if that elder was talented enough to catch up to them, they wouldn't mind letting that elder die prematurely. Xiao He and Xiao Bai saw that Bailey Hongzhuang was in such a good mood, and a big smile appeared on their faces. Indeed, no matter what, they had already completed what they needed to do. Next, they just had to wait for the Yu clan to change. Thinking about it, when all of this exploded, it would be very exciting. The elder chased after Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching all the way. However, he realized that the more he chased after them, the bigger the gap between them. He was very clear about his own strength. The other party was actually able to escape from his pursuit. It could be seen that the other party's strength wasn't ordinary. Thinking about the word revenge written on the wall, the elder had a very bad premonition in his heart. The other party was so strong that even he didn't notice that they had snuck into the martial skills hall. Now that they had left in a hurry, the Yu clan had probably suffered a huge loss. After chasing for a while, he realized that he couldn't catch up to them. The elder could only give up helplessly and return to the Yu clan. Ever since this elder shouted at Yu Siqing's door, Ji Lixue and the rest were all awakened and walked out of their houses. When they came out, they also noticed the word revenge written on the wall. They couldn't help but feel a chill in their hearts. The Yu clan head, Yu Taotian, also rushed over immediately. However, when he realized that Yu Siqing wasn't there, his face couldn't help but turn gloomy. Could something have happened to Yu Siqing? The other party had specially written the word revenge on Yu Siqing's wall. It was obvious that they were after Yu Siqing. Thinking of this, Yu Taotian couldn't help but push open Yu Siqing's house with a heavy heart. If Yu Siqing had really fallen, it would be a huge loss to the Yu clan. Ji Lixue and the rest were also pale as they stood quietly outside the house. It was obvious that they couldn't believe this result. Previously, they didn't notice anything. Could it be that Grandmaster Yu Siqing's life was taken away by someone else without anyone noticing? However, when Yu Taotian opened the door, he didn't see a bloody scene. He only saw Yu Siqing sleeping on the bed. Yu Siqing immediately woke up when she noticed the commotion. When she realized that Yu Taotian was in her room, she couldn't help but frown. "Big brother, why are you here?" Yu Taotian heaved a sigh of relief when he saw Yu Siqing talking to him normally. Siqing, why didn't you react when there was such a huge commotion earlier? We thought you were killed? Hearing that, Yu Siqing couldn't help but be taken aback. She looked at Yu Taoyan in astonishment. What do you mean? Qingyan has been too noisy these days. When I was resting, I used my essence force to seal my ears, so I didn't hear anything. Yu Taotian finally understood. If you do this, wouldn't it be a great opportunity for someone to attack you? But as long as you're fine, I can rest assured. He heaved a sigh of relief. It should be because the elder appeared in time that Yu Siqing was not harmed. Chapter 2594. Yu Siqing slowly walked out of the house. After seeing the two large words on the wall outside, her face couldn't help but turn gloomy. Revenge? The other party was here to seek revenge? For a moment, thousands of thoughts ran through Yu Siqing's mind. All these years, there were many situations where she didn't save people, but there weren't many situations where she took the initiative to offend people. This was because she had always stayed in the Yu clan and rarely left. In this world, the people who hated her the most were Mu Jin's, Mu Lingbing, and the others. However, they already didn't have the chance to seek revenge, so there was no need to worry. Therefore, there was only one possibility for the person who came to seek revenge, and that was the person she didn't save. However, she didn't know how many people she didn't save, so there was no way to determine who came to seek revenge. Ji Lishue and the others were originally in a heavy mood. When they suddenly saw Yu Siqing come out of the house safe and sound, they couldn't help but be stunned for a moment. So nothing happened to Grandmaster Yu Siqing. Where did Elder go now? Yu Siqing turned to look at Yu Taotian. She didn't hear any movements earlier, so she could only judge everything from Elder's position. Elder should have gone to chase after the person who left. Yu Taoyan said slowly, Siqing, is there really no movement at your place? The other party had come for Yu Siqing. Could it be that before they could do anything, they had already been discovered by the elders and forced to leave? Yu Siqing nodded. I didn't notice any movement. At least, no one entered my house. How is Qingyan? Yu Siqing's gaze turned to Ji Lishue. Lan Qingyan lived in the same courtyard as her. Perhaps the other party's target wasn't her, but Lan Qingyan. Ji Lishue couldn't help but be startled when she heard this. She quickly walked towards Lan Qingyan's house. At this moment, Yu Manlan walked out of Lan Qingyan's house, her face filled with worry. When did the Yu clan's defense become so weak? Even a stray cat or dog can come in and cause trouble. Yu Manlan hurriedly rushed out after hearing Elder's voice. The first thing she did was to confirm Lan Qingyan's safety. These days, Lan Qingyan was already tortured beyond recognition. If she were to be framed again, it would be too miserable. Fortunately, nothing happened to Lan Qingyan. However, the events of the past few days had already caused Yu Manlan to be extremely vexed. Therefore, her words were not pleasant to hear. Following Yu Manlan's words, Yu Taotian and Yu Siqing both frowned. Their expressions were cold. If Madame Lan thinks that our Yu clan's defense is not strong enough, why don't you just return home? Yu Siqing's words were not polite at all. Yu Manlan was just a junior, yet she dared to speak so impolitely. Yu Manlan was slightly stunned. She looked at Yu Siqing and Yu Taotian in astonishment. Just now, she recalled that there were so many people around. Her accusation just now was really inappropriate. However, she did not choose her words carefully, which was why she said those words. Looking at the cold faces of Yu Tan and Yu Yang, it was obvious that it was useless for her to explain further. But I didn't mean that. I'm just worried that something might happen. An awkward expression appeared on Yu Manlan's face. Although Yu Siqing had no way to remove the poison in Lan Qingyan's body, she could at least help Lan Qingyan extend her life. Chapter 2595. Yu Siqing snorted coldly. Her face was cold as usual. Obviously, she didn't care about Yu Manlan's explanation. Ever since Yu Manlan came, she had been disturbing her life. The reason why she was willing to treat Lan Qingyan was because of their blood relationship. However, Yu Manlan didn't know how to be grateful. On the contrary, she had a lot of opinions. If it wasn't for Lan Jingquang's gift, she would have driven Yu Manlan away. If it wasn't for Lan Qingyan being too noisy these days, she wouldn't have used her origin energy to seal her ears. As a result, she didn't notice this immediately. Yu Siqing didn't give Yu Manlan any face at all. She directly humiliated Yu Manlan in front of so many juniors. Yu Manlan was very sullen, but there was nothing she could do. It was true that she didn't control her temper just now. She couldn't help but feel a little annoyed. Yu Siqing was always so high and mighty. In terms of status, she wasn't inferior to Yu Siqing at all. Yu Siqing had always looked at her with the same eyes as before she was married. This made her extremely dissatisfied. Yu Taoyan's face was gloomy. Although he was very unhappy, he didn't make a fuss about this matter. The most important thing now was to know if the Yu clan suffered any losses. Siqing, are your disciples here? Did they suffer any losses? Yu Siqing also turned to look at Ji Lixue and the others. She found that Xian Yi wasn't in the crowd and frowned. Where is Xian Yi? Ji Lixue and the others were stunned. Previously, they were only thinking about Yu Siqing's possible death and didn't have time to pay attention to anything else. Only when Yu Siqing asked did they remember that they hadn't seen Xian Yi's figure. Master, I'll go take a look. Ji Lixue bowed. After receiving Yu Siqing's affirmation, she hurriedly rushed to Xian Yi's residence. When Ji Lixue arrived, she found that the house was empty and there were no signs of disorder. Obviously, they had left long ago. Master, Xian isn't in the house, Ji Lixue replied truthfully. Hearing Ji Lixue's words, everyone couldn't help but be in an uproar. Their faces were filled with disbelief. Could it be that the person who came for revenge is Xian Yi? I saw that Xian Yi had always been very honest and steady in his work. He didn't reveal any clues at all. Could it be that Xian Yi was kidnapped? Ji Lixue had a complicated expression on her face. She had gotten along well with Xian Yi over the past month. However, she always felt that Xian Yi was somewhat unfathomable. It was as if there was a layer of mysterious gauze draped over his body. It was hazy and could not be seen clearly. After everything that had happened today, she suddenly felt that it might have something to do with Xian Yi. Perhaps, this was the place that she had been unable to see clearly all this while. Yu Siqing's expression gradually changed from gloominess to astonishment and finally to rage. She had always been wary of Xian Yi because Xian Yi's background was unknown. Even though she had sent people to investigate Xian Yi's identity, she still did not find any clues. However, according to Xian Yi's behavior these days, he didn't seem to have any intentions at all, so she gradually let down her guard. She didn't expect such a thing to happen today. She had a hunch that this was Xian Yi's doing. Chapter 2596. Is there a problem with the newly recruited Xian Yi? Looking at Yu Siqing's change of expression, Yu Taotian understood the gist of the matter. However, Yu Siqing did not reply immediately. She only said indifferently, "Let's wait for the elder to return before making a judgment." Even though she had already determined the result, she still had to wait for the elder to return before making a definite judgment. Yu Taotian nodded. His thoughts were complicated. Xian Yi's performance in the recruitment assembly was obvious to all. He thought that recruiting Xian Yi would become another golden signboard of the Yu clan. He did not expect that not only did it not become a golden signboard, but it also brought back his enemy. Once this news spread out, it would be a huge loss of face for them. Just as Yu Taoyan was pondering, the elder had already returned to the Yu clan with a dejected look. Seeing that Yu Siqing was safe and sound, the elder could not help but heave a sigh of relief. "Siqing, luckily you are fine." Yu Siqing nodded, answering the elder's words. However, from the elder's complicated and helpless expression, she had a bad premonition. "Elder, did you catch the other party?" Yu Taoyan's voice was slightly hoarse as he asked. The elder shook his head. The other party's speed was very fast. "I chased them all the way, but they still managed to escape." "With your speed, how could the other party escape from your hands?" Yu Siqing was in disbelief. Even though she knew that Xian Yi's strength was not bad, it was impossible for his speed to be comparable to the elder's. The guardian elder's strength was something that the entire Yu clan had witnessed. Xian Yi was only around 20 years old. How could his strength be comparable to the elder's? This is the truth. The other party's speed was extremely fast. He was even faster than me. The group of doctors and poison masters could not help but gasp. None of them expected Xian Yi to be such a top-notch expert. Ji Lishua's pupils shrank. Xian Yi's strength was so strong that it would be easy for him to kill her. Fortunately, she was not too proud of Yu Siqing's closeness to her these days. Otherwise, she would have gone to hell to meet the king of hell. The other party left directly and did not kidnap anyone, right? Yu Siqing's voice was slightly cold. She had always prided herself on being smart, but she didn't expect that someone would act under her nose and she would be deceived. Kidnap? The hall keeper elder frowned, then shook his head. No, if the other party kidnapped someone, they wouldn't have done it so quickly. The result was obvious. Yu Taoyan couldn't help but sigh with a complicated expression. I didn't expect Xian Yi to have such good acting skills at such a young age. After pausing for a second, Yu Taotian continued, from the looks of it, Xian Yi must have known that you used your essence force to cover your ears and wanted to take this opportunity to make a move on you. I didn't expect to be discovered by the guardian elder, so I had to leave before I could do anything. Yu Siqing nodded. From the looks of it, this should be the case. Although they had accidentally recruited Xian into the Yu clan, they didn't suffer any losses. This was already a great fortune amidst the misfortune. Yu Manlan heaved a sigh of relief when she heard all of this. Fortunately, the problem wasn't serious. Chapter 2597. Hearing that, the elder's expression changed. He couldn't help but smack his forehead, his face filled with frustration and nervousness. Shit! I've forgotten the most important thing. Yu Taoan and the rest looked at the elder. They were originally relieved, but now their hearts were in their throats again. I heard the commotion in the martial skills hall and hurriedly chased over. In the process of chasing, I saw the word revenge written on Siqing's residence. I hurriedly shouted and continued to chase. I wonder how the martial skills hall is now. The elder had been so engrossed in talking that he had forgotten the most important thing. At this moment, almost everyone's expression changed. Everyone thought that Xian Yi was here to take revenge on Yu Siqing. They didn't expect her to make a move on the martial skills hall. According to what you said, Xian Yi wasn't the only one. She had other helpers? The elder nodded and said in a deep voice, I chased 2 auras from the martial skills hall and sensed 2 more auras here. They should have met up here and left together. Let's go to the martial skills hall to take a look. Yu Taoyan's hoarse voice had a hint of sharpness because he was anxious. The martial skills hall was the most important place in every clan. It was fine if there were no losses. However, if the martial skills hall was damaged, it would be terrible. The elder didn't dare to delay. His mission was to guard the martial skills hall. If the things in the martial skills hall were lost, he wouldn't be able to escape the blame. In the next second, Yu Taoyan, the elder, and the rest rushed to the martial skills hall. In this 1 year, their Yu clan had met with terrible things one after another. After Yu Taoan and the rest left, the doctors and poison masters who were left behind were in an uproar. Oh my god, I didn't expect Xian Yi to be here for revenge. If she killed Master Yu Siqing, it would really be. I wonder if the martial skills hall suffered any losses. It seems like this was a planned conspiracy. She even became Master Yu Siqing's disciple. This news is really shocking. Ji Lishue, you spent the most time with Xian. Did you notice anything? Everyone's gazes landed on Ji Lishue, wanting to know more about her. Ji Lishue quickly shook her head. I'm the same as you guys. I don't know anything at all. I still find it hard to believe. Now, she was almost certain that the man who came with Xian Yi was also one of the people involved. Their guts were really too big. Facing a colossus like the Yu clan, ordinary people wouldn't even have the courage to provoke them. Xian Yi and the others actually dared to infiltrate the Yu clan to take revenge on Yu Siqing. They were really too powerful. When everyone arrived at the martial skills hall and saw everything in the martial skills hall, even someone as calm as Yu Taotian almost fainted. That was because the huge martial skills hall had been emptied. In the entire martial skills hall, other than some of the lowest grade martial skills, everything else, including the medical books, had been taken away. With its empty appearance, No one would be able to connect this place with the martial skills hall that was previously filled with martial skills. How could this be? Yu Taotian almost fainted. This was a loss that the clan could not bear. Chapter 2598. The Guardian Elder was also dumbfounded. He felt suffocated and found it hard to breathe. Previously, when he heard a trace of movement, he immediately chased after them. However, looking at the situation in front of him, it was obvious that the other party had already moved most of the things in the martial skills hall. Not only that, the other party had left behind some low-level martial skills, not because they didn't have time to take them away, but because they felt that their levels were too low. He had been the Guardian Elder for so many years. He had also met some fellows who had designs on the martial skills hall. All of them were discovered by him and were punished by the Yu clan. However, this time, something so serious had happened while he was guarding the martial skills hall. The entire Yu clan's foundation was destroyed. He couldn't absolve himself from the blame even if he died. Yu Siqing looked at the scene in front of her in a daze. The severity of the situation was completely beyond her imagination. Compared to the losses that the Yu clan suffered last time, this was a devastating blow. Yu Taotian finally couldn't take it anymore and fainted. He could only hope that this was all a dream and not reality. Unfortunately, a dream was a dream after all. It was impossible to hope that something that had happened didn't happen. Yu Manlon, who was following behind Yu Taoyan and the others, was also shocked. She couldn't understand what kind of enemy the Yu clan had recently offended to cause this disaster wave after wave. She wasn't an ignorant person. After living in the Lan clan for so many years, she had some understanding of the clan's affairs. The martial skills and techniques in the martial skills hall had all disappeared. Even if the Yu clan could remember some of them, it would be impossible to maintain their previous prosperity and prosperity. Who exactly did you offend? Yu Manlon couldn't help but ask. Although she had married into the Lan clan and became a part of the Lan clan, the Yu clan was still her maternal family. If something happened to the Yu clan, it wouldn't be good for her. Originally, she had relied on the Yu clan to have some status in Lan Jingquang's heart. Once the Yu clan was no longer the same as before, her future would definitely not be easy. Yu Siqing, who was already in a terrible mood, couldn't help but look at Yu Manlon with disgust after hearing this. I think you should consider whether you brought your enemy to the Yu clan. Otherwise, why would the Yu clan be in trouble every time you come? Hearing this, Yu Manlon couldn't help but be stunned. Thinking about it carefully, this was indeed the case. Previously, before they came, the Yu clan had been living in peace. However, when they came, such a situation happened. Could it really be a coincidence? However, if the other party's enemy was her, then they should have gone to the Lan clan for revenge. Why would they attack the Yu clan's martial arts hall? Yu Manlon didn't understand, but she didn't dare to make a sound. Yu Taoyan was carried back. This blow was too great. Instinctively, he didn't want to wake up. The news that the martial arts hall had been plundered completely quickly spread throughout the Yu clan. Paper can't wrap fire. As long as someone came to the martial arts hall, they would know everything. In a split second, the Yu clan was shaken. Everyone found it hard to accept this. The elders of the Yu clan gathered in the martial arts hall, but when they saw the empty bookshelf, they sighed. An indescribable anger exploded in the hearts of the Yu clan members. The other party's actions had really crossed the bottom line of their Yu clan. Chapter 2599. The Yu clan immediately issued an arrest warrant for Xian. Xian Yi's portrait was immediately spread throughout the entire Yutian city. Xian Yi had done such a despicable thing. If the Yu clan did not cut her into pieces, they would never be able to appease their anger. However, while the Yu clan was chasing after them, Bailey Hongzhuang had already recovered her original appearance. She was walking confidently on the road back to Limitless Palace. She was in a good mood. Even when she was rushing back, the corners of her lips would occasionally curl up. My wife is in a good mood? Bewitching smiled as he looked at Bailey Hongzhuang. His extremely black eyes were deep and alluring. His warm and magnetic voice was filled with a different kind of charm. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows as her lips curled into a faint smile. I was thinking when Yu Taotian and the rest saw the looted martial arts hall, their reactions would be spectacular. Long before, Xiao He and Xiao Bai had already told Bailey Hongzhuang about their loot. Other than a few low-level martial arts techniques that Xiao He and Xiao Bai did not care about, they had already moved everything else over. Glancing at the martial arts techniques in the Chaos Ring, Bailey Hongzhuang was sure that the Yu clan's precious martial arts techniques and medical books were all here. My vision went black. Di Baichen said concisely, "They should have sent people to kill us by now." Bailey Hongzhuang laughed softly. "It's a pity that they are destined to not be able to find us." Next, she should look forward to the poison acting up and the Yu clan's destruction. The reason why no one dared to offend a poison master was because once a poison master's poison skills reached the pinnacle, they would be able to destroy a large force without sacrificing a single soldier. Yu Xiqing had been proud of this for so many years. She would completely defeat Yu Xiqing on this point. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. Now, I finally don't have to stay in the Yu clan, that disgusting place. Facing Yu Xiqing's ugly old face all day long, my appetite has decreased quite a bit. Xiao He sighed faintly and looked up at the sky at a 45-degree angle. Her bright eyes deliberately made a sorrowful expression. "Xiao He, you've put on weight again." Bailey Hongzhuang didn't mind exposing her. If Xiao He had said anything else, she might have believed her, but when it came to food, he couldn't believe it at all. To this guy, nothing was more important than food. Xiao He was stunned and her face immediately fell. "Master, can't you cooperate with me? This is a great time for me to show my loyalty." "I'll reluctantly cooperate with you if you change your excuse to show your loyalty. But this reason is really intolerable." Bailey Hongzhuang wrung her hands. As the master of the three gluttons, she had already recognized this truth a long time ago. Di Baichen's lips curled into a clear smile. Bailey Hongzhuang was already in the mood to joke around. It could be seen that she was in a good mood. "My wife, after the Lan clan's matter is settled, we should prepare for the big wedding." Di Baichen's dark eyes were filled with ripples as he stared at Bailey Hongzhuang. Marrying Bailey Hongzhuang grandly was something that he had been thinking about for a long time. At that time, there were many reasons in front of them, so they had no choice but to temporarily put everything aside and complete their unfinished business. But now that everything had been taken care of, all they had to do was wait for everything to be completed. Then he could legitimately hang the exclusive rights over Bailey Hongzhuang. Chapter 2600. Bailey Hongzhuang blushed as she looked at the side profile so close to her. Then she raised her eyebrows playfully. "My status now is different from before. If you want to marry me, it won't be enough if you don't have enough betrothal gifts. My entire being belongs to my wife. What else does my wife want?" Bailey Hongzhuang supported her chin with her index finger and pretended to be deep in thought. "Then I'll have to think about it." Di Baichen looked at the mischievous and adorable girl in front of him. His heart couldn't help but waver. In the next second, before Bailey Hongzhuang could come to a conclusion, she felt the world spin around her. Her waist was tightened and a scorching palm was wrapped around her slender waist like a soldering iron, forcing her to come closer. Di Baichen bent down and kissed Bailey Hongzhuang fiercely on her bright red and tender lips. Bailey Hongzhuang was caught off guard. Her lips were easily pried open and he drove straight in. This kiss was gentle. There was a trace of domineering possessiveness in the tossing and turning, playing along with her. Bailey Hongzhuang was tightly held in Di Baichen's arms and couldn't move. She felt the cool and refreshing breath and gradually went along with the kiss. Xiao He and Xiao Bai covered their eyes again. Bai Shi also turned his head immediately. The three beasties pretended not to see anything and walked forward, chanting in their hearts, "See no evil, see no evil. I feel that it won't be long before Di Baichen seduces Master and brings her home." Xiao Bai, seduced? Didn't they seduce him long ago? Master was targeted by Di Baichen not long after she transmigrated. Bai Shi, sinister, too sinister. The most pitiful one is Mo Yunjua. Xiao He, but speaking of which, there will definitely be a lot of delicious food at Master's wedding. I'm really looking forward to it, Xiao Bai, That makes sense. By sure. When Bewitching let go of Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but lean into his arms and pant. Her body felt weak and she could only stand up by leaning on him. Of course, Bailey Hongzhuang would never admit this. Wife, I've been cultivating my self-control for so long. Now that I finally had the chance, it was interrupted by a resentful husband who ran away from home. Don't you want to marry me earlier? So that I can be liberated? When she heard the first half of Di Beichen's words, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but stare, not understanding what he meant. But after hearing the second half of the sentence, Bailey Hongzhuang's face quickly turned red like it was burning. If it was crimson before, it was now so red that blood could be squeezed out. A resentful husband who ran away from home, wasn't this referring to Wenziren? It must be that time. You're really getting more and more overboard. Bailey Hongzhuang tried her best to pretend to be serious, but under Di Beichen's penetrating gaze, all the disguises were invisible. Obviously, there was no use. Wife, you're shy. Wife, do you agree to marry me? What if I don't? Then I'll announce it to the world. What's the use of you announcing it to the world? Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Di Beichen mockingly. She had been bullied by Di Beichen for so long. She had to find a chance to turn the tables. Otherwise, wouldn't she be defeated by Di Beichen? During the Battle of Zhuolu, when Xiao Feilin and the others called you young madam, you didn't reject them. Even if you didn't announce it to the world, everyone would know. Chapter 2601. Just as the Yu clan was furious and announced to the world that they were going to kill Xian, another disaster broke out in the Yu clan. The Yu clan's disciples suddenly contracted an acute illness and fell down one after another. It was like a plague, sweeping through half of the Yu clan in a short period of time. Yu Taotian had yet to recover from the fact that the martial arts hall was emptied out when the outbreak of the plague gave him another fatal blow. The previous poisoning incident had already dealt a huge blow to the Yu clan. Even though a few months had passed, they still hadn't recovered. Who would have thought that it would happen again this time? Moreover, the scale seemed to be even bigger than the previous time and the damage was even more terrifying. Yu Taotian didn't even have time to think about how to deal with the robbery of the martial arts hall. He immediately rushed to Yu Siqing's residence. Siqing, do you have a way to neutralize this poison? Yu Taotian, who was usually calm and collected, was now filled with anxiety and hope as he looked at Yu Siqing. Whether the Yu clan could survive this crisis depended on Yu Siqing. Yu Siqing's expression was very ugly. She had already seen the condition of the disciples who were poisoned. This was definitely not a simple poison. Clan Master, I'm afraid this situation is very difficult to resolve. Yu Siqing's voice was low. She had always boasted that her medical and poison skills were very strong. However, in this 1 year, she didn't know why she had come into contact with so many poisons that were beyond her expectations. Even with her strength, she couldn't neutralize these poisons. The other party's poison skills were obviously a level higher than hers. This was a conspiracy that targeted the Yu clan. As Yu Siqing's voice fell, Yu Taotian took a few steps back until he touched the wall. The other party's poison skills are above mine. They deliberately poisoned the disciples to make the Yu clan helpless. I studied it just now and realized that I couldn't even differentiate the basic ingredients of the poison. The poison acts very quickly. I'm afraid the disciples won't be able to hold on for long. Even if I really think of a way to neutralize the poison, it would be too late. Under such a dangerous situation, Yu Siqing didn't hide anything. Because if she did, the Yu clan situation would be even worse. So, our Yu clan is hopeless? Yu Taotian raised his head with difficulty. His hoarse and deep voice was trembling uncontrollably. Their Yu clan had stood tall in the Xingxian continent for so many years. Could it be that they were going to be destroyed because of this disaster? Yu Taotian couldn't hold it in any longer. He spat out a mouthful of blood and his aura weakened. As the clan master of the Yu clan, he had never thought that there would be such a day. If that was the case, how was he going to face his ancestors in the underworld? Yu Siqing hurriedly supported Yu Taotian. Clan master, now that things have come to this, We can only ask the uninfected Yu clan members to leave quickly. Facing such a terrifying poison, Yu Siqing no longer had the confidence to fight against it. She could only retreat quickly so that the Yu clan would not be completely annihilated. Yu Taoyan's hands were trembling and his eyes were bloodshot. Is there really no other way? I will think of a way to neutralize this poison, but in order to minimize losses, we can only retreat first, Yu Siqing said in a low voice. Yu Taoyan stood up shakily and walked out of the house slowly. Chapter 2602. Yu Manlon panicked after knowing that the plague had broken out in the Yu clan. She hurriedly rushed to Yu Siqing's residence. Just as she reached the door, Yu Manlon heard the conversation between Yu Taotian and Yu Siqing. She couldn't help but be shocked. Even though she saw the terrifying speed of the outbreak of the plague, she didn't expect the situation to be so serious. If the Yu clan was really going to collapse like this, then she had to leave with Qingyan quickly. Lan Qingyan was already heavily poisoned and her body was extremely weak. If she was infected with the plague now, she would really die. However, if they left directly, without Yu Siqing, Lan Qingyan's life would also be lost. Fortunately, Yu Siqing also suggested that everyone should evacuate together. As long as they evacuated together, there was no need to worry. Thinking of this, Yu Manlon couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. This could be considered a great fortune amidst the misfortune. "Aunt, let me help evacuate." Yu Manlon looked at Yu Siqing's expression and asked carefully. Yu Siqing glanced at Yu Manlon indifferently. This time, she didn't say anything. The outbreak of the plague in the Yu clan was sudden. Just a day ago, the Yu clan was still aggressively saying that they wanted to kill Xian. The next day, the entire Yu clan was like a stray dog and could only choose to migrate. Ji Lishue and the other doctors and poison masters were completely dumbfounded after seeing this scene. After knowing that Xian Yi had ransacked the Yu clan's martial arts hall, they were already full of admiration for Xian Yi's ability. However, none of them thought that Xian Yi could actually create such a huge commotion in the Yu clan. It was really too terrifying. How much hatred does Xian Yi have with the Yu clan? He wants to destroy the entire Yu clan in one fell swoop. Why are we so unlucky? It wasn't easy for us to enter the Yu clan through the recruitment assembly. We were still looking forward to shining brightly in the future. Now that the Yu clan has become like this, what should we do? I heard that even Master Yu Siqing couldn't cure this poison. Could it be that Xian Yi's poison skills are more powerful than Master Yu Siqing's? Everyone was discussing this matter. They didn't expect such a thing to happen. Now, they were like ants on a hot pan. They didn't know what to do. No one came to tell them what to do next, and they didn't dare to go out and ask. It would be terrible if they were infected. They could only deduce from the situation in front of them that the Yu clan had the intention to migrate. Ji Lishue couldn't help but look a little flustered. After witnessing Xian Yi's medical skills, she was very impressed. It was just that he did not expect Xian Yi's poison skills to be so powerful. It seemed like Xian Yi had been hiding it all along. She felt that Xian Yi must have an extremely powerful master. Otherwise, how could the young Xian Yi be nurtured to such a level? At this moment, she was somewhat envious of Xian Yi. She had been following Master Yu Siqing for a month, but Master Yu Siqing had not taught her anything. According to her understanding, she didn't know how long she would have to wait for Master Yu Siqing to truly teach her. In the past, she had always worshipped Master Yu Siqing. However, ever since she entered the Yu clan, she realized that many things were different from what she had imagined. Chapter 2603. Suddenly, Ji Lishue saw Yu Ruelin, who was not far away, and her eyes lit up. Just as she was about to ask Yu Ruelin about the Yu clan's current situation, she saw Yu Ruelin glance at her and leave the Yu clan's territory with the others. Seeing this, Ji Lishue couldn't help but feel a chill in her heart. Speaking of which, it was best to see a person's sincerity at such a crucial moment. Obviously, Yu Ruelin only had himself in his mind at such a moment. At this moment, Yu Siqing walked out of the house and looked at Ji Lishue and the others. "Pack up and get ready to leave." Hearing this, Ji Lishue and the others couldn't help but be stunned. It seemed like their guess was right. Yu Siqing obviously didn't have the mood to talk to Ji Lishue and the others. The most important thing now was to quickly evacuate the Yu clan's disciples. The longer they stayed here, the greater the Yu clan's losses would be. Now that the Yu clan's decline was unstoppable, the only thing they could do was to reduce their losses and give the Yu clan a chance to rise again. However, he did not know when he would be able to make a comeback. Clan Master, this is definitely a conspiracy. I think it's very likely that it's the same group of people from the previous time. The Yu clan Great Elder's face was filled with grief and indignation. How glorious was the Yu clan normally? Now the entire clan was fleeing like a stray dog. If this news were to spread, it would really be a disgrace to the clan. As soon as he said that, Yu Taoyan and the others' faces changed. I also think that it's very likely. The other party's methods are not much different from the previous time. It's just that this poison is more powerful than the previous time. They came prepared. Yu Siqing spoke slowly in a deep voice. This thought had been circling in her mind. These two matters were shockingly similar. The only difference was that the other party was obviously in a hurry the previous time, but this time, they came prepared. Therefore, the destructive power this time was much more terrifying than the previous time. Who exactly is this Xianyi? How did our Yu clan offend her to the extent that she would do such a vicious thing? Yu Taoyan punched the table fiercely and the entire table instantly shattered into pieces. The other party's methods were too sinister. If it was a direct confrontation, they could at least be somewhat prepared. However, everything was carried out in secret. When they discovered it, it was already too late. To think that their dignified Yu clan would be destroyed in such a short period of time. It was really too unacceptable. The Yu clan's elders also had a gloomy face. Up until now, they still felt as if they were in a dream. They had just woken up from a nap. How did everything change so quickly? I shouldn't have recruited Xianyi this time. His strength is so outstanding, there must be a problem. The second elder's face was gloomy. A kind of unwillingness and anger spread in his heart. How glorious they were usually, how glorious were they usually? In the future, they would not to the clans up. In the future to face to meet people to blame to say, Chapter 2604. Father, where are we moving to? Yu Manlon had already asked the Lan clan to prepare a palanquin and settled Lan Qingyan down. She didn't want to stay here any longer. If she lost her life here, it wouldn't be worth it. However, she could only move with Yu Siqing now. This was the only way to save Lan Qingyan's life. Where should they move to? This was also the problem that Yu Taotian was having a headache about. With the outbreak of the poison, their losses were huge. However, there was still a certain number of descendants left. If they went to other places, they might not be able to find a place to settle down. It was really troublesome. At this moment, Yu Siqing looked at Yu Manlon indifferently and said, "Why don't we move to the Lan clan temporarily?" Yu Manlon couldn't help but be stunned. She didn't have such an idea. Now the entire Yu clan was like a stray dog. With such a huge troop, if they went to the Lan clan, wouldn't it bring great trouble to the Lan clan? Moreover, no one knew who was infected by the poison. This poison was like a plague that was contagious. If the Lan clan was implicated because of this, what should they do? She was almost certain that if Lan Jingquang knew about this, he would fly into a rage. That was something she couldn't bear. However, before Yu Manlon could reject, Yu Taotian and the other elders' eyes lit up. The Lan clan has a huge business and is related to us by marriage. It's only right for them to help us. The first elder of the Yu clan said slowly, "As long as we go to the Lan clan, we won't be disturbed by other forces. It's really an excellent choice." The Yu clan's second elder also had a face full of approval. Originally, they didn't know where to go, but now that they thought of the Lan clan, this was really the best choice. Although the Yu clan had nurtured many outstanding doctors and poison masters over the years and had formed some good karma, there were still hostile forces. Once they knew that the Yu clan had fallen into such a situation, they would definitely hit them when they were down. Once that happened, the Yu clan would have no chance to make a comeback in the future. Yu Taotian nodded. The Lan clan had always been on good terms with them. Now that his daughter had married into the Lan clan had no choice but to help. At the very least, they could only rely on the Lan family's help before they could take a breather. Since that's the case, it's decided then. Lead the disciples to the Lan clan. Yu Taotian made his decision. Right now, the most important thing for them was to prevent this loss from spreading. They had to find a place to settle down first. Yu Manlan looked at everyone in a daze. It was as if everyone had made a decision in this short moment. She even suspected that everyone had already made up their minds before she even said anything. This was not something she wanted to see. Father, I'm afraid it's not appropriate for us to suddenly go to the Lan family like this, right? Yu Manlan panicked. If things really came to this, how would the Lan family view her? This was something she simply couldn't bear. Chapter 2605. Yu Siqing's words were tantamount to putting a hat on Yu Manlan's head. She couldn't even refute. If she disagreed, wouldn't it be tantamount to being ungrateful? Yu Manlan quietly observed the expressions of Yu Taotian and the others. It was obvious that once she rejected, they would respond harshly. Perhaps, at this time, even if she rejected, it would be useless. Thinking of this, Yu Manlan couldn't help but feel annoyed. She didn't understand why all these things happened together. If Lan Qingyan hadn't been poisoned at this time, she wouldn't have come to the Yu clan and naturally wouldn't be involved in this matter. Even if the Yu clan went directly to the Lan clan, it was under the circumstances that she didn't know. She couldn't be completely blamed. Now that she was with the Lan clan, if she went back, the Lan clan would think that it was her idea. Wouldn't that be terrible? It would be good if Lan Jingquang didn't leave. After all, this kind of thing was decided by Lan Jingquang. Then she didn't need to care. Unfortunately, Lan Jingquang had left a few days ago, and all these things happened to her. She was speechless to the extreme. What kind of bad luck did she have this year? Why did all these things happen to her? Manlan, I will communicate with the Lan clan master about this matter. Pack up and prepare to leave. Yu Taotian directly asserted. He had made up his mind. He knew what Yu Manlan was thinking. He also knew Yu Manlan's position in the Lan clan all these years. But now it was a matter of life and death for the Yu clan. Yu Manlan should do her part for the clan. The clan had helped Yu Manlan for so many years. Now it was time for Yu Manlan to contribute. If the Yu clan didn't seize this opportunity, it was very likely that they would be wiped out in the future. After all, there were many forces that coveted the Yu clan. If they came to loot a burning house now, it would be one disaster after another. Yu Siqing and the elders didn't care about Yu Manlan's thoughts. In fact, Yu Manlan's thoughts were not important at all. They had already made up their minds. Seeing everyone's actions, Yu Manlan also knew that it was useless no matter what she said now. She could only try her best to minimize the impact. Father, since we are moving to the Lan clan, I think it's better to bring the Yu clan's disciples over. As for the other outsiders, it's better not to go. Otherwise, it wouldn't be good if there are still people hiding among the outsiders. Yu Manlan probed. If she brought the others along, the number of people would be too much. Moreover, no one could guarantee that there were no spies among these outsiders. If it could be guaranteed, then Xian Yi wouldn't have appeared, and today's disaster wouldn't have happened. Hearing Yu Manlan's words, Yu Taotian pondered for a moment and then nodded. You're right. Let's do that. It was already very embarrassing for them to bring the uninfected children of the family to disturb the Lan family. If they brought many outsiders, it would be very unpleasant if word got out. Yu Siqing and the others did not object. Right now, the most important thing was their residence. As for the people they had recruited, they were naturally not in the scope of their responsibility. Chapter 2606. In the process of packing, Ji Lixue unintentionally saw a note left behind by Xian Yi. The content was very simple. If the Yu clan abandoned them and they had nowhere else to go, they could go to a certain place to look for her. When she saw this note, Ji Lixue couldn't help but be stunned. She never thought that Xian Yi would leave her such a note. Didn't this mean that Xian Yi had exposed his location? For a moment, Ji Lixue thought about whether she should give this note to Yu Siqing, but she kept it in the end. She didn't know what kind of hatred Xian Yi had with the Yu clan, but according to her understanding of Xian Yi, he wasn't someone who couldn't differentiate right from wrong. She thought back to when she provoked Xian Yi didn't take her life. On the contrary, he even helped her greatly. She felt that Xian Yi must have treated the Yu clan this way because the Yu clan had hurt him deeply. This could be seen from the word revenge. There was no cause and effect. In the end, no one could tell who was right and who was wrong. As an outsider, she naturally couldn't make any assertions. However, Xian Yi left this note for her, which meant that he trusted her very much. Just based on this point, she couldn't let down Xian Yi's trust in her. After all, she didn't have any value in deceiving Xian Yi. Xian Yi probably just wanted to give her a choice. After thinking about it, Ji Lixue still didn't waver. Although the Yu clan had fallen into such a state, she was still Yu Siqing's direct disciple. This was also her goal for so long. She couldn't give up so easily. However, when Ji Lixue finished packing and stood with the group of doctors and poison masters, waiting for Yu Siqing to return to lead them, she realized that Yu Siqing hadn't returned. I just saw the clan leader and master Yu Siqing leave Yutian City together. It seems like they didn't plan to bring us along. At this moment, a doctor ran back quickly. She couldn't hide the panic on her face as she recounted what she saw. Ji Lixue and the others were stunned. They felt that they had already become a part of the Yu clan after joining them. They didn't expect the Yu clan to abandon them at this time. Is what you said true? They left just like that? Could it be that he forgot about us? Don't be naive. If they really have us in their heart, how could they forget about such a large group of us? Moreover, Ji Lixue was the Grandmaster's personal disciple. The Grandmaster would never forget her. Since the Master hasn't returned, he must have left us behind. Everyone's heart gradually sank. Right now, the entire Yu clan was a source of infection. They only hoped that they could leave together. Now that they had been abandoned, where should they go? I just heard the news that the Yu clan is preparing to rush towards the Lan clan. However, they are only bringing the Yu clan's disciples with them. We outsiders will not have the chance to follow them. In my opinion, we should leave quickly. If we continue to stay here, I'm afraid it won't be long before we get infected. But I came all the way here just to learn from a master. Now, where do you want me to go? Chapter 2607. All of a sudden, all the doctors and poison masters had ugly expressions on their faces. They had come all the way to the Yu clan to fight for a future. They had thought that they would have a meteoric rise in the future after coming to the Yu clan. They hadn't expected to be abandoned by the Yu clan. Instead, they didn't know where to go. Doctors weren't very strong to begin with. They only relied on their medical skills to travel the world. If they encountered any danger on the way back, they would really lose their lives. In comparison, a poison master's ability to protect himself was much stronger than a poison master. However, his bright future was gone just like that. The drop in his heart was not small. He had to find another way out. After Ji Lixue knew all this, she couldn't help but frown. She had never thought of this outcome. Not to mention the others, as Yu Siqing's direct disciple, Yu Siqing shouldn't have abandoned her like this. This feeling, it was as if her persistence for so many years had become a joke. From the beginning to the end, Yu Siqing had never treated her as one of her own. At this moment, Ji Lixue couldn't help but think of the note Xian Yi had left her. Her heart couldn't help but thump. Could it be that all of this was within Xian Yi's expectations? Ji Lixue took out the note again. After carefully reading the contents of the note, she was sure that all of this was within Xian Yi's expectations. It turned out that Xian Yi had seen through all of this long ago. She also knew that Yu Siqing wouldn't take her away at this time. Just like how Xian Yi, as an outsider, had already seen that Di Tiansong wasn't sincere to her, but she was still entangled in this relationship. With this comparison, she realized that the gap between her and Xian Yi was so big. However, since Xian Yi had already anticipated everything, he should have already thought about the follow-up matters. Ji Lixue's eyes kept changing. Thousands of thoughts ran through her mind. An idea that had never crossed her mind before began to move at this moment. In that case, she might as well see what kind of place Xian Yi was talking about. They still had so many doctors and poison masters here who didn't know where to go. If they could really find a good place to go, it would be great. She felt that Xian Yi's master might be there. Xian Yi's master's medical and poison skills were clearly stronger than Yu Xiqing's. If they went there, they might have a better development. As for her worship of Yu Xiqing, it was completely cut off from today onwards. Thinking of this, Ji Lixue couldn't help but look at the people behind her. I know a place where we can go. Are you willing to trust me? The group of doctors and poison masters looked at Ji Lixue in surprise. They hadn't expected her to make such a suggestion. Everyone looked at each other. Ji Lixue was Yu Xiqing's personal disciple, so they usually listened to her arrangements. Now that Ji Lixue had made such a suggestion and they didn't know where to go, it wouldn't be a bad thing to follow them. After some consideration, everyone decided to follow Ji Lixue to take a look. Chapter 2608. In fact, Ji Lixue was also a little nervous. She didn't know what kind of place Xian Yi was talking about. Although they had been abandoned by the Yu clan, as doctors and poison masters who could enter the Yu clan, it was not a big problem for them to find a decent force to stay in. However, it was impossible for them to enter an aristocratic family or a sect. If Xian Yi told them to go to an ordinary place, it would be meaningless. However, Ji Lixue still chose to believe in Xian. She did not know why, but when she thought of Xian Yi, she felt an inexplicable sense of trust. Because from the moment they met, Xian Yi always had a confident look on her face, as if everything was within her expectations. Moreover, to be able to use her own strength to cause the Yu clan to fall into such a state, this was enough to prove Xian Yi's power. Just as the Yu clan members were moving quickly, Ji Lixue and the others also set off towards the place Xian Yi had told them to go. The originally bustling Yutian city had become a deserted city in just a few days, no longer as prosperous as before. Along the way, Yu Xiqing was thinking about how to cure the poison in the Yu clan members. However, the final result made Yu Xiqing break down a little, because she realized that the other party's method of making poison was really superb. Compared to the poison used in the first confrontation, Yu Xiqing felt that at least there was a trace to follow. Although it would take a lot of time, she still knew where to start. The poison this time was obviously more powerful, and the other party did not intend to give her any chance to cure the poison. She pondered for a long time, but could not find a way to start. This feeling made Yu Xiqing very sullen, and she did not understand when there was a poison master in the Shengxian continent. If such an expert appeared, he should have been famous long ago, but she did not receive any news at all. She boasted that she understood poison, and had never met a poison that she could not cure in so many years. However, she had met one now, and the other party had come specifically for the Yu clan. Could it be that she did not help in the past, so the other party desperately learned poison to take revenge? Even Yu Xiqing felt that this possibility was unbelievable. Clan Master, we are going to the Lan clan together this time. Will the person seeking revenge continue to come after knowing about our situation? The great elder of the Yu clan couldn't hide the worry on his face. Previously, the other party had already dealt them a heavy blow, but the other party wasn't satisfied, so they came again this time. The Yu clan had turned into stray dogs. However, they still managed to preserve some of their strength and were not completely annihilated. With the other party's unrelenting character, he was truly worried that if it happened again, all of them would die tragically. As soon as these words were spoken, the atmosphere in the carriage immediately became much more solemn. Everyone's faces darkened, and their expressions were extremely unsightly. This was something they didn't want to think about. One must know that with their Yu clan's current strength, not to mention a cultivation aristocratic family, they couldn't even be compared to a small clan. This was the most frightening thing. In the future, let's not trust any outsiders anymore. This risk should be reduced by a lot. Yu clan's second elder said slowly. Chapter 2609. Yu Xiqing remained silent and did not speak. Her thoughts were very complicated. The other party did not write on any of the rooms, but on her room, they wrote the word revenge. She had a vague feeling that the other party was coming for her. As for the entire Yu clan, they might have been implicated by her. Of course, she would not say this out loud. If she did not feel that the other party's target was very likely her, she would have chosen to leave by now. After all, with her reputation, no matter where she went, she would definitely be welcomed. Why should she follow the Yu clan and embarrass herself? It was a pity that she could only follow the others for the time being before she figured out all the details. Now, she had thought of all the possible enemies, but she just couldn't figure out who did it. This made her extremely depressed. Yu Manlon and Lan Qingyan sat in the other carriage. Seeing Lan Qingyan's pale face after being jolted, Yu Manlon also did not feel good. She only had one daughter, Lan Qingyan. If something happened to Lan Qingyan, she would not be able to bear it. Yu Siqing had obviously put more effort into researching the poison in her children. Although she was very dissatisfied, Yu Siqing had never listened to her, so she could not do anything. As they got closer to the Lan clan, Yu Siqing's heart became more and more anxious. She really did not know how to answer when the Lan clan members asked about this matter. Thinking of Lan Jingquang's possible gaze, she felt her heart tremble. All these years, Lan Jingquang's tolerance for her had become lower and lower. If he directly divorced her because of this matter, then she would really be finished. Moreover, because Lan Qingyan had become like this, the Lan clan was also in troubled times. Needless to say, Lan Jingquang was now trying his best to pacify the clan's problems. If she brought so many people from the Yu clan along, it would undoubtedly leave something to be used against her. If it was in the past, the Yu clan would naturally have the effect of holding the fort. But now, they were fleeing for their lives. She really did not know what to say. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen hurried back to Limitless Palace. Perhaps it was because their mood was extremely relaxed, even their footsteps were much faster. When Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen appeared in Limitless Palace, the disciples of Limitless Palace welcomed them. Today, Bailey Hongzhuang's reputation was no longer the same as it was in the past. All the disciples were convinced by her, but they were very curious about what the young palace master and Di Beichen did this time. Bailey Hongzhuang's face was full of smiles as she went to the palace lord's bedroom. Since she had already returned, she naturally had to report the situation to her master. She couldn't always let her master and master's wife find her every time. Moreover, the day of her trip to the Lan family was approaching. She also wanted to know what her parents were planning. She believed that after her parents saw the letter she sent when she left, they would definitely reply immediately. Yu Linfeng's news was naturally very fast. When Bailey Hongzhuang and Yu Siqing arrived at the palace lord's bedroom, Yu Linfeng and Nangong Wu were already waiting for them. Hongzhuang, looking at your smiling expression, it seems like you succeeded. Chapter 2610. During this period of time, they had been waiting for news from Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen. Last time, Bailey Hongzhuang and Yu Yang had gone to rescue their parents and caused great losses to the Yu clan. However, they had returned in a short period of time. However, this time, Bailey Hongzhuang and Yu Yang had gone out for a long time without any news. This caused Nangong Wu to be a little worried. Yu Linfeng was obviously full of confidence in Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen. From the beginning to the end, he didn't feel at ease at all. He only told Nangong Wu to be at ease and wait for their return. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly and nodded, yes. As soon as she said this, the smiles on Nangong Wu and Yu Linfeng's faces widened a little. This result was what they had all been waiting for. That's really great. Nangong Wu clapped her hands. Her beautiful and enchanting face was filled with joy. Quickly tell me, how did you guys do it? She had originally wanted to send someone to follow them to find out the news. However, she was worried that if they were found out, it would affect Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen's plan. I participated in the Yu clan's recruitment assembly. Bailey Hongzhuang sat down beside Nangong Wu. She understood her master's wife's gossipy mentality very well. Without needing Nangong Wu to ask, she told Nangong Wu everything that had happened during this period of time. After knowing that Bailey Hongzhuang had obtained first place in the recruitment assembly and had passed with full marks, Nangong Wu and Yu Linfeng's faces couldn't help but be filled with astonishment. They had always been confident in Bailey Hongzhuang's medical skills, but there had never been such an amazing result in the recruitment event. This Yu Siqing is indeed a sinister person. I think she only accepted you as her direct disciples because she wanted to find people to help her. She didn't teach you anything for a month. Nangong Wu was speechless. Ever since she found out about Yu Siqing's actions over the years, she despised Yu Siqing to the extreme. This woman had always prioritized her own interests, even if the other party was her family. She really couldn't understand how a person could be so cold-blooded and heartless. Nothing was more important than her own interests. Just like how Yu Siqing wouldn't guide her disciples sincerely, she would only make use of them. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang's extremely black eyes burst into a dazzling light. Her luck was really very good. Master and Master's wife had always been sincere to her and had never hidden anything from her. This calmness and selflessness surprised her. This sincerity made her feel that she was unable to repay them. Compared to Yu Siqing's sinister selfishness, everything that Master and Master's wife had done was incomparably precious. Yu Siqing naturally can't be compared to Master and Master's wife. How could other people be as lucky as me? Bailey Hongzhuang chuckled. Yu Linfeng and Nangong Wu's expressions softened. In fact, they were also very lucky. Otherwise, where would they find a successor like Bailey Hongzhuang? For a moment, the entire chamber was filled with laughter. That's right, Master and Master's wife. This time, I made a decision on my own, Bailey Hongzhuang said slowly. What decision? Yu Linfeng looked at Bailey Hongzhuang indifferently, as if no matter what decision Bailey Hongzhuang made, he wouldn't be worried. Chapter 26:11. Bailey Hongzhuang's clear eyes flashed with a sharp and far-sighted radiance. Her light and sweet voice was also filled with certainty. In that kind of situation, it would be inconvenient for the Yu clan to bring a lot of outsiders. They would definitely leave the doctors and poison masters behind. I feel that these doctors and poison masters are quite strong. If we nurture them well, it would be beneficial for our limitless palace to rise in status. Following Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Yu Linfeng and Nangong Wu's faces were filled with astonishment. They had never thought that Bailey Hongzhuang would make such a decision. Seeing that Yu Linfeng and Nangong Wu were silent and did not say anything, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyebrows furrowed. Her eyes darkened as she thought to herself. Could it be that Master and Mistress felt that her idea was not good? She had discussed it with Bewitching and felt that this idea was very feasible. Only then did she decide to do it. If Master and Mistress were not willing, then she would transfer them to another place? Master and Mistress, if you feel that this matter is very troublesome, Bailey Hongzhuang opened her mouth at a loss. Without waiting for her to finish her words, Nangong Wu suddenly pulled her hand and looked at her with sparkling eyes. Hongzhuang, you are really too smart. You can even think of this kind of idea. If Yu Siqing knew that not only did you cause the Yu clan to fall into such a situation, you even recruited their doctors and poison masters, she would probably be angered to death. Whenever I think of this matter, I feel delighted. When that time comes, I must personally see Yu Siqing's expression. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Nangong Wu, who said a lot of things like pouring beans. She could not help but stare blankly. So, it was not that Mistress did not agree, but that she was immersed in her idea? Looking at Bailey Hongzhuang's stunned expression, Bewitching's face was filled with smiles. Nangong Wu's character had always been one to be startled, and this kind of reaction was not unexpected. Yu Linfeng's lips curled into a refined smile. Following that, he gave Bailey Hongzhuang a thumbs up. Hongzhuang, if it really succeeds, then you would really have done a great service. As the palace master of Limitless Palace, Yu Linfeng naturally knew the role of the doctors. In the past, which power did not envy the Yu clan's doctors and poison masters. These were resources that every major force couldn't lack. However, the Yu clan's status in the eyes was too stable. Almost every one of them would go to the Yu clan, as if they were the only place where carps would leap over the dragon's gate. The doctors and poison masters that the various big powers usually recruited could not be compared to the Yu clan's talents. Therefore, everyone could only continue like this. Every time they wanted to recruit a few doctors and poison masters from the Yu clan, the various powers would have to pay a huge price. Furthermore, they also had to curry favor with the Yu clan. It was really a bit sullen. Now that the Yu clan had fallen into such a situation, many powers would definitely be happy to see it. After all, everyone knew about Yu Siqing's sarcasm and pickiness in the past. They had no choice but to accept it. However, when the various powers were happy that the Yu clan had fallen into such a situation, they would definitely be very worried. If they wanted to recruit doctors and poison masters in the future, they would not have a good choice. Chapter 26:12. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. Her beautiful and exquisite face revealed a bit of satisfaction and confidence. Although I'm not sure yet, I feel that I'm quite confident. During her time in the Yu clan, Bailey Hongzhuang had a certain understanding of Yu Siqing's and Ji Lishue's personalities. Unless Yu Siqing chose to leave with Ji Lishue would definitely choose to bring doctors and poison masters to investigate after seeing the note she left behind. Although doctors and poison masters were scarce resources to many forces, it was not easy for ordinary doctors to find a way to enter the forces. Therefore, as long as Yu Siqing suggested it, everyone would definitely come with the intention of investigating. Limitless Palace. Once they knew that the place they came to was Limitless Palace, she believed that no one would refuse. This was her confidence in Limitless Palace. Seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang was so confident, the smile on Yu Linfeng and the others' faces deepened. Bailey Hongzhuang had never been an exaggerating person. Since she said she was sure, then she must be 80% or 90% sure. Master, once those doctors and poison masters come, they will know that the place we stayed at is Limitless Palace, and they will also know my identity. Saying that, Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but look at Yu Linfeng. This was unavoidable. Yu Linfeng naturally knew what Bailey Hongzhuang meant and immediately said, "No problem. You originally planned to lay your cards on the table. With Master as your backing, it doesn't matter if everything is exposed." Yu Linfeng seemed to be very free and easy. Even if others knew that the Yu clan was defeated by Limitless Palace's young palace master, so what? In this world, the winner was the king, and the loser was the bandit. No one would care about this process. Moreover, the reason why the Yu clan had fallen into such a situation was because of their own actions. Once Bailey Hongzhuang's identity was exposed, everyone would know everything. Perhaps the entire Xingxian continent's forces would tremble. After getting Yu Linfeng's understanding, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief. Ever since Limitless Palace had risen to the top, they had always been very positive. If people knew that the Yu clan had been defeated by Limitless Palace, they would definitely be criticized. In reality, this was completely a personal grudge between her and the Yu clan. However, other people would not think this way. After all, she was the young palace master of Limitless Palace. Hongzhuang, you don't have to worry about this at all. We will always be on your side. Those despicable fellows have been arrogant for so many years. It's time for them to receive their retribution. Nangongwu was beaming with joy. What was there to care about when dealing with this kind of guy who angered both men and gods? I'm afraid that the Yu clan's losses would be disastrous, and they would no longer be able to regain their former glory. Once this news spreads out, many powers who have enmity with the Yu clan would not let them off easily. It's impossible for the Yu clan to regain their former glory. Bewitching said slowly. As long as they were still around, the Yu clan would never be able to make a comeback. Once Limitless Palace, Tiangang Sect and Sun Moon Palace joined hands and declared that they were enemies with the Yu clan, the other powers would definitely not dare to approach the Yu clan. Under this kind of situation, the Yu clan could only struggle at death's door until they gradually disappeared. Chapter 26:13. Now that the Yu clan had suffered heavy losses, it was the best time to beat them while they were down. Once this news spread out, the Yu clan's enemies would definitely not miss this opportunity. They would definitely deal with the Yu clan immediately. After all, the earlier they acted, the more benefits they would get. A starving camel was still bigger than a horse. The Yu clan had been strong for so many years, they had quite a number of treasures. It's too late to spread the news now. Yu Linfeng laughed softly. His eyes that were as black as jade were filled with affection and gentleness. Nan Gongwu had always had a temperament that was easily agitated. She hated evil as if it was her personal enemy and wished for the world to be in chaos. Back when they were together, Nan Gongwu had always caused all sorts of trouble. Every time, he would helplessly help Nan Gongwu clean up her mess. However, it was also because of Nan Gongwu's personality and true nature that he liked her. Helping her clean up her mess was also something that Yu Linfeng was used to doing. Too late. Nan Gongwu frowned doubtfully. She did not understand the meaning of Yu Linfeng's words at that moment. If our judgment is not wrong, the Yu clan should have moved to the Lan clan immediately. After such a long time, I'm afraid that they have already reached the Lan clan. Bewitching, who had been silent all this while, slowly opened his mouth. His handsome face held a slight smile. This was the best plan that he could think of from the Yu clan's standpoint. Since he could think of it, there were many smart people in the Yu clan. Naturally, they could also think of this point. I see. Nan Gongwu suddenly understood. With so many people from the Yu clan moving to the Lan clan, it would be a big trouble for the Lan clan. I'm afraid that the Lan clan would not be willing to accept it. Even if the Yu clan had suffered a heavy blow and lost a lot of people, there would still be a lot of people left. With such a large group of people going to the Lan clan to seek protection, they would not be able to leave the Lan clan for a long time. Facing such a big trouble suddenly, no one would be willing to do so. Even if the Lan clan is not willing, they can only suffer in silence because of their relationship with the Yu clan. If they reject the Lan family's request, once the news spreads, it will have a great impact on the Lan family's reputation. Bailey Hongzhuang's ink-black phoenix eyes flashed with a bit of light. Her face was calm and indifferent. This scene was also what she wanted to see. When she went to the Lan clan to reveal her identity, the Lan clan and the Yu clan would know about it immediately. Back then, these two clans had joined forces to force them into such a situation. Now, she was going to let these two clans experience the consequences of their actions. Nan Gongwu nodded. She didn't miss the fierce look in Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes. It seemed that Bailey Hongzhuang had already planned all of this. By the way, Hongzhuang, there's something I have to tell you. Nan Gongwu seemed to have suddenly thought of something. She straightened her face and looked serious. During the time you were away, we noticed that there were people from the Lan family who came to inquire about you, but we didn't leak any information, so they probably didn't get anything. There's also a letter from the Shirtian pavilion. Take a look. Nan Gongwu took out a letter from her Chenkuan bag and handed it to Bailey Hongzhuang. Has your identity been known by the Lan clan? Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. It's okay. This is also within my expectations. Chapter 26:14. Bailey Hongzhuang opened the envelope. The content of the letter was very simple. The Lan family had sent someone to the Shirtian pavilion to investigate Bailey Hongzhuang's identity and wanted to know about Bailey Hongzhuang's experience over the years. However, Mo Yunjue directly refused. Mo Yunjue and Bailey Hongzhuang had a good relationship. Since the Battle of Zhualu, many forces had already known about this year. Lan Barong had no choice but to ask the Shirtian pavilion because Limitless Palace kept a tight lid on information. Most importantly, from the information they received, Bailey Hongzhuang seemed to have appeared out of thin air and inexplicably became the young palace master of Limitless Palace. Before this, Yu Linfeng, the palace master of Limitless Palace, had never mentioned anything about the young palace master. Even the disciples of Limitless Palace only saw the young palace master's true appearance on the day of the Battle of Zhualu. Therefore, they couldn't get any information from Limitless Palace. On the contrary, they got more information from Tiangang sect. However, they didn't know anything about Bailey Hongzhuang before she participated in the assessment. Although they didn't know much, Lan Barong felt that the possibility of Bailey Hongzhuang being the child they had been looking for was increasing. This might be an intuition, but this intuition was shockingly sharp. Bewitching looked at the contents of the letter. The situation was indeed not beyond their expectations. They weren't worried about this. In fact, even if the Lan family knew Bailey Hongzhuang's true identity now, the Lan family couldn't do anything about it. Master, is there any news from the Sun Moon Palace? Bailey Hongzhuang didn't say anything after reading the content. Instead, she looked at Yu Linfeng. Her parents' thoughts would determine what she would do when she went to the Lan family's frozen divine pond. Would she reveal her identity directly or find another opportunity? Everything depended on how her parents' recovery was. This time, they must make a grand appearance in front of the Lan family. They must let those relatives who had shown them cold faces see it with their own eyes. From there, they would know what a wrong choice they had made back then. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's question, Yu Linfeng and Nangong Wu smiled. You will know about this when you return to your palace. Yu Linfeng didn't answer him directly, but kept him in suspense. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows slightly. Her clear eyes revealed a trace of doubt, but she did not continue to ask. Master's wife, when I left the Yu clan this time, I brought along the Yu clan's martial arts hall's cultivation techniques, martial arts and medical books. If it's suitable, you can use it to enrich the martial arts hall. As for these medical books, you can also keep them. If the Yu clan's doctors and poison masters are really recruited by me, then they will also be a kind of resource. After saying this, Bailey Hongzhuang directly placed the universe bag on the table. Nangong Wu couldn't help but stare blankly. Then, she exploded. Hongzhuang, I didn't hear wrongly, right? You brought the Yu clan's martial arts hall here? Yu Linfeng, who was always elegant and casual, couldn't help but stiffen. His expression was filled with disbelief. The Yu clan actually didn't even realize that the martial arts hall was stolen? The martial arts hall was the foundation of every power. Chapter 26:15. Nangong Wu and Yu Linfeng did not doubt Bailey Hongzhuang's words when they saw the astonishing amount of martial skills in the Qiankuan bag. No matter how Bailey Hongzhuang did it, she had indeed done it. It's not hard to imagine how much the Yu clan hates you. Nangong Wu could not help but shake her head. She felt that the Yu clan was extremely unlucky to have offended Bailey Hongzhuang. The Yu clan had stood tall in the Xingxian continent for so many years. Not only did they have to move away en masse, even the foundation that they had accumulated for so many years was shaken. It was really shocking. If Yu Taotian knew that all of this was because of Yu Siqing's selfishness, who knew if he would still value his sister so much? Hearing that, Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but chuckle. She could also imagine how furious Yu Taotian and the others would be when they knew about this. However, the angrier they were, the happier she would be. Mistress, I will return to my bedroom first. Bailey Hongzhuang said slowly. She also wanted to know what her parents were planning to do. She would be able to carry out the next step of her plan after she returned to her bedroom. At this moment, Yu Linfeng said, Hongzhuang, these martial skills are not cheap. You should keep them for yourself. Martial skills were the most important resources for cultivators. Usually, a high-level martial skill could be auctioned for a sky-high price. Furthermore, these were the treasures of the Yu clan for so many years. Master, I am the young palace master of Limitless Palace. These things naturally belong to Limitless Palace. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled lightly. She understood her master's thoughts. However, she had already treated Limitless Palace as her own home. Ever since she became her master's disciple, her master had always helped her generously. These martial skills were extremely valuable in other people's eyes. However, in her eyes, they could not be compared to her master's kindness. Limitless Palace had not been established for as long as other large sections. Naturally, their martial skills were slightly lacking. Other powers had to accumulate for so many years to reach this step. However, her master had relied on his own strength to reach this step. Although he was accumulating them bit by bit, it was a very long process. Now that they had the Yu clan's martial skills, Limitless Palace's foundation could increase a little. It would also be very helpful for their disciples to increase their strength. As Bailey Hongzhuang's voice fell, Yu Linfeng was silent for a moment before he nodded, the smile in his eyes becoming gentler. They were Yu clan. Now. Yu clan. It was Hongzhuang's fortune to have a master like Yu Linfeng. just like how he had been raised by his master since he was young. If it wasn't for Situ Yen who happened to pass by at that time, he would have long become a wisp of a ghost in this world. How could he have such a life now? Speaking of which, they were once unfortunate. But now, they were also fortunate. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen returned to the palace together. They had been on the road for so many days, and they also wanted to freshen up. After all, this travel-worn appearance was really not very comfortable. Chapter 26:16. In the past, when they came back, there was no one else in the bedroom. They didn't know who was inside today. However, the two of them didn't mind. Usually, Nangongwu would send people to help clean the bedroom. Who knows, maybe they would bump into them today. After all, Nangongwu didn't know when they would come back. As they slowly walked back to the bedroom, the three beasts had already slipped in. Immediately after, Bailey Hongzhuang heard the three beasts' cries of surprise. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen quickly rushed to the three beasts' location. Immediately after, two figures appeared in Bailey Hongzhuang's line of sight. The worry on Bailey Hongzhuang's face quickly dissipated and was replaced with joy. "Father, Mother, when did you come to Limitless Palace? I didn't even know." A dazzling smile appeared on her exquisite face. Bailey Hongzhuang's voice was light and happy. "After we received your letter, we decided to come over." Lan Yunxiao smiled and said. He didn't expect that Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen had already done so many things in such a short period of time. When they found out that Bailey Hongzhuang was actually going to find the Yu clan to take revenge, they couldn't help but be shocked. They immediately rushed to Limitless Palace. However, Bailey Hongzhuang had already set off. They originally planned to go to Yutian City to take a look. However, under Yu Linfeng's persuasion, they chose to stay in Limitless Palace and wait for Bailey Hongzhuang to come back. Yu Linfeng obviously had a lot of confidence in Bailey Hongzhuang. His words were filled with reassurance that they didn't need to worry about this matter. As Hongzhuang's parents, they didn't spend much time with Hongzhuang. They didn't really understand Hongzhuang's abilities. In their eyes, Yu Siqing was an extremely vicious and merciless person. Once Bailey Hongzhuang was found out by Yu Siqing, they would be in dire straits. They had been living like this all these years. At this moment, seeing Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen return safely, they could not help but breathe a sigh of relief. Fortunately, there were no problems. Otherwise, even if they had to risk their lives against Yu Siqing, they would definitely tear her to pieces. "Yixuan, isn't it a little too risky for the two of you to go to Yutian City?" Fortunately, nothing happened. Otherwise, Mother would be worried to death. Mu Lingbing tugged at Bailey Hongzhuang's hand, her tone reproachful, but her eyes were filled with concern. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. "Mother, look, aren't we back in one piece? It's precisely because we're confident that we'll be able to do it. It's also because the two of us are small targets that won't be easily discovered." Mu Lingbing rolled her eyes at Bailey Hongzhuang, but she heaved a sigh of relief. In her eyes, Bailey Hongzhuang's safety was the most important. "What did the two of you do in Yutian City this time? Did you encounter any danger?" Lan Yunxiao walked to Di Beichen's side. The usually refined and quiet him couldn't help but ask. After all, this matter concerned his precious daughter. Di Beichen saw that his future father-in-law had asked him, and naturally did not dare to neglect. He immediately told him what they had done and the results. He had promised his future father-in-law that he would properly protect Hongzhuang. He couldn't allow his future father-in-law to be dissatisfied with him because of this. Chapter 26:17. The Yu clan had collapsed just like that. Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing found it hard to believe. A power that had existed for so many years in the Shengxian continent was destroyed by Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen single-handedly. This level of destruction was too shocking. All along, the destructive power of poison masters had never been weak. However, there had never been a poison master whose destructive power had reached such a level. Moreover, the other party was from the Yu clan, famous for their medical and poison skills. Although their hearts were filled with emotion, Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing knew that Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen wouldn't lie to them. They could only say that the two's strength was abnormal. According to what you said, the Yu clan has moved to the Lan clan? Mu Lingbing frowned. If the Yu clan and Lan clan became one, wouldn't that increase Lan Jingquang's power? Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. This is only my guess. I can't confirm it yet, but we've already sent people to investigate. Yishuan's guess is very likely. Coincidentally, Lan Qingyan is recuperating at the Yu clan. Now that the Yu clan is in trouble, moving to the Lan clan is the best choice, Lan Yunxiao said in a low voice. Father, Mother, I'll be going to the Lan clan's divine ice lake in a few days. Have you made your decision? Bailey Hongzhuang's clear eyes stared at Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing's outstanding appearances. She had always wanted to know what her parents were planning. We've already recovered a lot of our strength, but there's still a gap between us and Lan Jingquang. Mu Lingbing's brows furrowed slightly, a trace of worry appearing on her face. If possible, she also hoped that the three of them could go to the Lan clan together, but, back then, they had never lost to Lan Jingquang and Yumanlan. This time, they naturally didn't want to be weaker than them. However, there was still a gap in strength. If they went like this, their aura would be suppressed. This wasn't something they wanted to see. Give us another 1 or 2 months. That should be enough, Lan Yunxiao said slowly. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes lit up. 2 months is still not too late. It takes a month to cultivate in the icy divine pond. Plus the interval, it's almost 2 months. When she heard Mu Lingbing's words, she thought that the gap was huge. If it was only 2 months, then there was still time. This is all thanks to Lin Feng's help. If it wasn't for his help, I'm afraid we would have to wait a few years before we can go to the Lan clan. Lan Yunxiao's voice was warm and mellow, and there was a hint of emotion in his voice. He never thought that his daughter's master would be Yu Linfeng. Speaking of which, life's encounters were truly miraculous. Perhaps everything was predestined. Back then, he had helped Yu Linfeng out of goodwill. Now, Yu Linfeng was also doing his best to help his daughter. It was a great karma. As Lan Yunxiao's voice fell, Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching thought for a moment and understood the meaning behind his words. They never thought that Yu Linfeng would let Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing know about the existence of the stairway to heaven. It seemed that Yu Linfeng didn't just trust them a little. Even though Yu Linfeng was also a member of the Lan clan and was related to Lan Yunxiao by blood, he definitely wouldn't reveal anything unless it was someone he trusted. Chapter 26:18. She had always been curious about her master's identity. However, since her master hated the Lan family so much, he must have had terrible memories back then. Thus, she didn't ask about it to avoid reminding her master of something he didn't want to recall. She was curious why her master had such a good impression of her father when he hated the Lan family so much. She only heard her master say that her father had helped him back then, so she was curious about the process. What kind of past could make her master hate the Lan family so much that he even took out the rainbow pearl? Lan Yunxiao saw the unconcealable curiosity in Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes and nodded with a faint smile. Lin Feng is also a disciple of the Lan family, but he's only a branch disciple. He doesn't want to talk about the past anymore, but I helped him when someone bullied him back then. I didn't expect Lin Feng to remember this. In fact, I haven't seen him since he left the Lan family at a young age. By chance and coincidence, he actually became your master, and there was a day when he and I would meet again. Bailey Hongzhuang saw that Lan Yunxiao didn't talk about the past in detail, so she didn't ask anymore. Perhaps what happened back then was too harmful to her master, so he never talked about it. It's all fate. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled sweetly. Now that she had so many people who cared about her, it was really a great blessing. Father, the rainbow pearl in my body was also given to me by Master. Do you know this? The depths of Lan Yunxiao's eyes flickered as a trace of heaviness flitted across his handsome and elegant face. The rainbow pearl. That was the greatest pain in his heart. He didn't find it inappropriate that he didn't obtain the 7-colored divine pearl. In fact, Yu Linfeng's strength and talent were very strong. In the past, his reputation in the Lan family was very high. Even if he didn't have the rainbow pearl, it wouldn't be a problem. When he found out that his precious daughter had the rainbow pearl in her body, he was also very happy. However, he didn't protect his daughter well and allowed her rainbow pearl to be snatched away. Her life was ruined when she didn't know anything. I know. Lan Yunxiao's expression quickly returned to normal. He would personally make Lan Jing pay for everything that happened that year. For the grievances his daughter had suffered, he would never let go of anyone involved in the original plan. He had never thought that Yu Linfeng would hate the Lan family to such an extent that he would not even be willing to accept an inheritance like the Rainbow Divine Pearl. However, Bailey Hongzhuang regaining the Rainbow Divine Pearl was something that made him extremely happy. Yixuan, you have to be filial to your master in the future. Lan Yunxiao amiably patted Bailey Hongzhuang's shoulder. Yu Linfeng didn't want to recall the past, but he was willing to treat them as family. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. I understand. Master is so good to us. I will not forget this kindness. Mu Lingbing and Lan Yunxiao looked at each other, feeling gratified in their hearts. Their daughter had not been with them for so many years, but she had grown up to be so outstanding. God was also kind to them. During this period of time, we will do our best to raise our cultivation. When the time comes, we will head to the Lan family. Chapter 26:19. Bailey Hongzhuang rested in the Wuji Palace for a few days. She and Bewitching were also cultivating on the sky stairway. Since they were about to head to the Lan family, the stronger they were, the better. Even if they couldn't improve much in a short period of time, it was still good to stabilize their cultivation. Bailey Hongzhuang had broken through too quickly during the Battle of Zhuolu, so her foundation wasn't stable enough. However, after a month of cultivation in the Yu family, her foundation was once again stabilized. Now that she had a good foundation, she would be able to improve greatly in the divine pond of ice and snow. Bailey Hongzhuang wasn't very clear about the value of the divine pond of ice and snow, but as a member of the Lan family, Lan Yunxiao was naturally very familiar with the family's treasures. From Lan Yunxiao's explanation, Bailey Hongzhuang understood that the divine pond of ice and snow contained a very special kind of energy. Not only could it increase a cultivator's strength, but it could also reduce the difficulty of breaking through to the purple realm. The blue realm and purple realm seemed to be the same realm, but breaking through to the purple realm was the most difficult of all. Many geniuses were stuck at the blue realm 9th level, unable to break through no matter how hard they tried. Only a few rare treasures in the world could be of help. Thus, the divine pond of ice and snow alone was enough to make all the major powers scramble for it. The divine pond of ice and snow was also one of the Lan family's foundations. Because of the divine pond of ice and snow, the Lan family's cultivators had a higher chance of breaking through to the purple realm than other families' cultivators. As long as there was one more purple realm expert, the family's strength would increase by a lot. This was also one of the reasons why the Lan family had been ranked among the top families for so many years. In many people's eyes, the Lan family was an extremely lucky family. Not only did they have the divine pond of ice and snow, they also had a mysterious inheritance like the Rainbow Pearl. These two treasures were enough to stabilize the Lan family's position. If one's cultivation hasn't reached the Blue Realm 9th level when entering the divine pond of ice and snow, will it still be useful? Bailey Hongzhuang asked. Lan Yunxiao nodded with a faint smile. It's still effective, but the closer you are to the 9th level of the Blue Realm, the greater the effect. Even if there is some difference, this energy will remain in the cultivator's body. When the time comes to break through to the Purple Realm, this energy will be of some help. This divine pond of ice and snow is indeed magical. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes lit up. Nature was indeed full of wonders. Anything could be born. These kinds of wondrous items were often of great help to cultivators, but it was impossible to identify the source. It is indeed not easy to break through to the Purple Realm. This bottleneck is much more difficult than the bottlenecks of other realms. Bewitching's handsome face was slightly cold. He had already felt this during this period of time. During the Battle of Zhuolu, he had already broken through to Blue Realm level 9. However, during this period of time, he only felt that the origin energy stored in his body was constantly increasing, but the bottleneck showed no signs of loosening. This was the first time he had encountered such a situation since he started cultivating. No matter how he tried to break through, the bottleneck remained as stable as Mount Tai, making him feel a sense of defeat. Bewitching, you've been in Blue Realm Level 9 for a while now, right? You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.